It's really for you to amplify the things that you're doing.
Hold. I think maybe I could put just a little more so that I'm a little fuller up in here. Does this
Perfect.
make more sense? Because
Absolutely
the
perfect.
space above is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, so we'll get going. Uh,
All right. I hope the
uh,
GPL doesn't interfere.
no, you should be fine. You're worried that there might be a
Yes,
back.
I am.
No, it should be fine.
No, okay.
So,
Mhm.
uh, good evening and
Mhm.
welcome to the Guyana Business Journal Election Conversation 2025.
Good
Uh,
evening.
I'm Terrence Blackman, professor and chair of the Department of Mathematics at Medgar Evers College and the founder of the Guyana Business Journal. And today we're joined by one of the most compelling voices in Guyana's upcoming September 1st general election. You know, as the nation stands at these historic crossroads, transformed by unprecedented wealth, I think we've been seeing some of that in the social media captions today. Yet we're sort of grappling with long-standing challenges of governance, unity, and we need leaders who can navigate both these opportunities and the complexities. So today's conversation is one that I've been looking forward to. Features Miss Amanza Walton-Desir, presidential candidate and leader of the Forward Guyana Movement, a new political force that has emerged just months ago, but has already captured national attention with its call for constitutional reform, justice, political unity that transcends our traditional ethnic divisions. Ms. Walton-Desir brings a unique perspective to this election. A lawyer by training, she served as a shadow minister for foreign affairs, until, dare I say, her dramatic resignation from the People's National Congress reform in June to establish her own political movement. Her journey from established opposition politician to founder of a new political alternative, I think, reflects the broader currents of change flowing through Guyana. Ms. Walton-Desir, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, before we dive into policy specifics and so on, uh, I want to do two things. One, reading the bio, I noticed Mackenzie High School. It's a place I have a number of friends from Mackenzie High School. I noticed President's College. So my neighbor Ahmed Holder was among the first group of students who went to President's College. And so I started thinking the young woman from Mackenzie High School, young woman from President's College who's gone on to the University of Guyana, gone on to do study law, maritime law, and, you know, help us to understand what motivated you to leave the established opposition and start something entirely new.
Yeah, that's a question I get asked a lot. Let me start off by saying thank you for having me on here, Dr. Blackman. It's certainly a pleasure to be able to speak with you. I've seen the headlines. Did she commit political suicide? Look, I'll say that anyone who has known me has always known that I've been about Guyana and doing what's in the best interest of this country. Um, from the fact that I chose not to migrate, I chose to build a life and a career here, even though there were other opportunities. My love for this country runs deep, and it took a lot of soul searching to step out, as you've said, from the shelter of an established opposition to start this. But I came to a point in my political life where I had to make some hard decisions. And feedback in the. Are you
Yeah,
hearing me
I
clearly?
can hear you fine now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
fine.
I was saying that it came to the point where I had to make a decision about my political future and the future of this country. Because for the last 5 years, I had spent my political life based on reports, giving very compelling presentations, very thorough and factual analyses, making compelling cases, but nothing changed. Didn't make an impact because the mindset of government and of governance in this country, and particularly in our political construct as it is right now, is that you will have your say, but we will have our way. So you can stand and talk all you want, make the most sense in the world. This is our agenda, and this is what is going to happen. We're not going to flex, we're not going to bend. And so I had to make a decision as to whether I wanted to um, continue to participate in a system like that, even if it were my party, my former party, the APNU, being in government. And then I had to reconcile with the fact that the lived reality of Guyanese, not the curated picture, but the lived reality of Guyanese is that when one set of when a particular party is in office, half of the country feels locked out. And then when another set is in office, the other half feels locked out. And so I had to do some introspection and ask myself whether I really wanted to be a part of a system that would continue to pit us against each other, particularly in the context of the fact that we face an existential threat on our western flank, and particularly in the context of the fact that we are this emerging oil economy with more money than we've ever seen as a nation, but still so many Guyanese feel locked out.
Yeah, but actually, how would you respond to? Because that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
we just talked about this unprecedented, the fastest growing economy in the world,
Mm-hmm.
5 consecutive years. I mean, how do you explain this paradox of unprecedented prosperity? I mean, I think today, someone shared with me a social media post of
Oh
some
yeah.
gentleman talking about, and I pointed out to a colleague of mine,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't just lend someone $400 million, uh, and so how do you explain 400 million in one place and this persistent, as the World Bank and IDB figures suggest to us that there are 48% of the people living on
Mm-hmm.
$5. How do you see that?
Because it's growth without inclusion. It's growth without inclusion. And so while we look very good on paper, that reality is not getting down to the ordinary Guyanese man or woman. It is also because of this broken system that I alluded to earlier. And so you have a situation where the bounty of this economy is being hoarded by a top 1 or 2%, and nobody else gets to participate. The only way you get to participate, and when you do get to participate, it is not in a meaningful way. It's by groveling, um, compromising your standards. I mean, you've had MPs who've recently, crossed the floor and have gone from criticizing this government to the best thing, and really, for a lot of people, that's an existential decision. So the paradox of poverty in the midst of plenty is directly tied to the fact that the system is broken. And why do I say that? When for us to succeed as Guyana in this new era, we have to build the system. Dr. Blackman, everything that Guyanese need, hope, and dream for are to be delivered within a particular system. And when that system gives one political party with 51% of the power, 100% of the say, we will always find ourselves being reduced and subjected to the whims, the fancies, the caprices of whoever is in office. I often make the distinction of, the US, you all have your fair share of issues there. But what you have are strong institutions and a functioning democracy. And so there is not a direct impact on citizens. In Guyana, it's full on contact. And so weak institutions coupled with um, traditional ethnic voting, coupled with a political system that gives you the power 100% of it, even if you win by 5,000 votes, is a recipe. And it is the direct cause of what we are experiencing here today. And so the only way to fix that is to fix the system and to advocate and fight for a more inclusive, shared approach to governance.
So your Forward Guyana sort of movement is a coalition of three organizations. Help some of us here to walk us through how this alliance you think can address the issues that you've just raised.
Well, what I like about our coalition is that it came together organically. And of course, we've had to answer the question of, there are three Afro-Guyanese leaders, and I'm quick to point out, yes, that is because it came together organically. It was not engineered in such a way, and we basically we didn't unite for convenience, but we realized that what we agreed upon was more than we agreed upon. And so the issue of stamping out endemic corruption, the issue of ending this winner takes all politics, the issue of improving the lives of Guyanese, and those the management of our wealth, we found that we had a lot in common. And so, of course, as three newer movements, it made sense for us to pool together our resources, our people, and enter into this race, because you know you have to understand that we do not buy into this paradigm anymore, that we're forever locked into this two-party system. This two-party system in Guyana is not a law of nature. It's a habit, and habits can be broken. And
I
so,
hear you, but if you think through, like the last election, we have six
uh-huh.
parties now contesting. The
Mhm,
PPP
mhm,
won sort of narrowly in 2020, like as you just noted, with just over 50% of the vote. So then my question
mhm.
is, how do you see Forward Guyana planning to break through what has traditionally been this two-party system?
Look, we believe in direct engagement with citizens. We believe in telling our people the truth, irrespective of how inconvenient it might be. And the truth is that for us to grow and thrive as Guyanese, we have got to wake up and understand that what confronts us will only be overcome if we change this system and if we unite around common issues. The threat to Guyana is existential, and I don't mean to instill fear or to stoke fear in anybody. You see geopolitical winds accumulating on our shores. You see the impact of big oil, etc. You see the threat from Venezuela continuously being present. And the only way we are going to overcome these obstacles is if we have some people who are willing to say, you know what, we have to unite, not unite through capitulation, which is what this current administration tends um, to practice, where they pressure you into saying, "Oh yes, we're united." That's unity through capitulation. A
That's
man convinced against his own will is of the same mind still, and so unless there is genuine shared governance, unless we understand the importance of building our institutions together. I keep being reminded of the African proverb that says that when brothers fight, a stranger inherits their land. And our message is simple, Guyana. If we do not sit up and take stock, we will find ourselves being relegated to third and fourth class citizens in our own country, a country that our foreparents built, that my foreparents were dragged here and built on the duress that the Indo-Guyanese predecessors came as indentured servants, etc. This is our home. And unless we stop the bickering, the ethnic infighting and allowing ourselves to be pit one against the other. Dr. Blackman, the reality that I had to be honest with myself about is that this two-party system literally is designed to continue to pit us against each other. Because you pick a camp and you be quiet. And there's no getting over the reality that the APNU base is predominantly Afro-Guyanese and the PPP base is predominantly East Indian. And so when an Afro-Guyanese goes over to, oh, he's a soup drinker, he's a slave, all kinds of things. And then if an Indo-Guyanese is seen supporting the APNU, the kind of pressures that they come under at a societal and a cultural level is real. And so just by the existence of these two parties and us having to decide, you're going to pick one and stick with it, the system is designed to keep us pitted against each other. Look at
I want to ask you one more question on that one, because I think you make a very eloquent point for, why you need a Forward Guyana movement and you need these other parties to begin to, if not diminish, but begin to create the political space for genuine alignment around principle. I want to, you've called for these things, but what exactly would you change now? I mean, Nigel Hughes came on and he had a set of things. What from a policy standpoint would be, forward? I mean, I am assuming that there will be enough votes for Forward Guyana's move to be a part of the next parliament. Certainly to be a part of the next parliament. One would hope to see more than that. It would be good to see a female head of state in Guyana, but we will wait.
I agree.
we will wait in hope. Mm-hmm. It would be good to see it. But in terms of the constitutional proposal, I mean, what precisely would you aim at?
Dr. Blackman, the Constitution has to be reformed. There has to be constitutional reform that allows a far more greater degree of power sharing and of shared governance. And so that has to be first and foremost, because everything that, like I said before, we aspire to is achieved within the context of our institutions, our constitution, our legal and institutional frameworks. And so to the degree that those are broken, we got to fix them, or else everything else is like spitting in the wind. Now, I believe that when you look at the Constitution, you look at it on its face, and it appears to be a document that perceives that there should be some kind of consultation and power sharing, etc. Article 13 talks about an inclusive democracy, but it is just that. It is hortatory language, and there's nothing underpinning the enforcement of that paradigm. So by and large, it depends greatly on the spirit and intent of whoever is in office. And God help us if that is a mean-spirited, ill-intentional individual or group of people, as you're seeing happening now. The other problem that you have is that since I'm a little girl, I'm closer now to 50, than I am 40. And since I'm a little girl, you hear about the Constitution and it's flawed and it has too much power vested in the executive. And then people promise reform, and then when they get the sweet, suddenly it's kicked down the road I'll give you a recent example. The PPP made a big hue and cry about constitutional reform after the 2020 impasse. And in 2025, and almost $1 billion later, the Constitutional Reform Committee has not met on a single substantive issue. And this is the problem that you have, because you do not have servant leaders who are willing to say, you know what, we're going to put Guyana first this time, irrespective of whether it may be temporarily politically inexpedient for us to do this. Guyana needs this. And so I am happy, the prime ministerial candidate, Nigel London, is a very straight shooter. And I'm glad that we have and are surrounded by people who are willing to say, yes, it's not popular. We know that. People may call it politically naive. We've heard those terms thrown about. But what we are a group of people who are willing to say, you know what, even if it means that temporarily we are inconvenienced, as it were, our country needs this. After 60 years, we can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Something fundamental has to change. And so we're the generation that are stepping up to say, hey, okay, we're going to break the back of this winner takes all politics. We are going to make sure that we leave Guyana better than we found it. And so at the end of our political tenure lives, we will look back and say, you know what, we did the right thing because it was the right thing to do for this nation.
Well, I suppose one of you listeners said it's not popular, but it is the right thing to do. But I want to ask you about another right thing. We talked about sharing. We talked about sharing. And, the biggest sharing question is this ongoing controversy about the production sharing agreement with ExxonMobil. And so, some are calling for renegotiation, and certainly it is a sharing issue. What is Forward Guyana's position in this regard? You're muted.
I'm so sorry. Yes, we are going to be very clear and honest with the people of Guyana and say to them, look, sanctity of contract is a thing that has to be honored, right? Your investment partners must be sure that what you agree to is what you will hold yourself to. Having said that, however, we will be the first to acknowledge that renegotiating agreements is something that is done in the ordinary course of business. And so, as I've said before, we are sure that there will be room to renegotiate with our development partners to make sure that Guyana receives, a fairer share of what she is entitled to. That will not be done by bullying your investment partner. It will be done through negotiation. It will be done through negotiation with people who have the capacity, Dr. Blackman, to do the negotiations, because as it stands right now, the entire oil sector is run by Barrett Jagdeo and two other people. And so we do not have the institutional capacity to approach negotiating in any way, shape, or form. The other dilemma that we have is that we are already receiving revenue that we can't manage. And not because we don't have Guyanese with the expertise and the ability to manage it, not because we don't know what has to be done, because we are at the mercy of a cabal that insists on doing the wrong thing, even though they know what the right thing is to do. So they come in and they got the Department of Energy and replace it with Barrett Jagdeo and Bobby Gosai and Vikram Bharat. And that is what they have against a giant like Exxon. No investment bankers, no international law firm, no leaning on countries like Norway and so on, who have done this before and who have set up in institutional frameworks to do this. The question that dogs us with our oil sector is the question of management. The question of management.
No, I think I'm glad that you've shared that you've shared broadly your perspective and the perspectives of the Forward Guyana Movement on this. I don't think many people had heard your position in this regard. Beyond oil, how do you see the economic future for Guyana? What sectors should we be developing to kind of ensure long-term prosperity, as you see it from your perspective? You're muted once more.
So sorry. Yes, diversification will be paramount. Agriculture, agro-processing, manufacturing. We have got to our economy right now is reliant solely on the revenues from oil. And that is so supremely dangerous. And so diversification is key. We have got to understand that unless we diversify our economy, we we're at the mercy of oil prices, etc. So I would focus heavily on agriculture, agro-processing, on light manufacturing, on integrating a little more deeply the value chain, because we are purely extractive right now. So I will stop to say here that we last week or 2 weeks ago launched a contract with Guyana. And that contract with Guyana was our, I would say, overarching, maybe aspirational framework, because we found that Guyanese did not any longer have a compelling vision as to what we wanted this country to be, And so our contract, we were very clear, notwithstanding the reports in the media, was phase one of what we wanted to do for Guyana. So our contract in Guyana was set out, and it has all of the pillars along which we will develop the economy. And what we are in the process of rolling out now are the policies under the various sectors. So today, for example, it being Youth Day internationally, released our culture, youth, and sport policy. In another few days, you will see a national economic plan being unveiled. And so we are being very careful and deliberate in what we say and promise to the people of Guyana, because I'll tell you that right now there's a bidding war going on, and nobody is testing the viability of all that is being promised to Guyanese, and the notion that you will just give and not think about the future of our children and how we are leaving it for them, which, Dr. Blackman, we have a constitutional duty to do.
Yes.
And so people say, oh, they're politically naive. That's fine. That's okay. We're going to tell you the hard truth. And that is that we can't eat everything today and have our children starve tomorrow. Venezuela is a cautionary tale about how, when oil wealth is mismanaged, a nation and a people suffer and they're left stripped of their dignity, so that Venezuelans are coming here and taking menial jobs. These last few years saw an influx of Venezuelans like never before, because they're feeling economic hardship. And so for us, it has to be a cautionary tale that we have to be careful how we manage this economy, and we have to manage it prudently. Now, I will hasten to add this. The PPPC administration, when it suits them, loves to invoke fiscal prudence as, oh, we can't raise your wages because of XYZ. But this is the same PPP that will build one road for $3 billion every 2 years.
Yeah.
This is the same PPP that makes no attempt to close the efficiency gap, which is at 41%, so that for every dollar we spend, we lose 41 cents on the dollar due to corruption and efficiency. And so we have to be very honest with the people of Guyana. We have to be very clear with them that they handle culture. that is being developed where you stretch out your hand and what you giving me, what you got for me, $100,000, etc., is the quickest way to ensure that you are enslaved. Because unless you design a system that can deliver for people, people will always be at the mercy of the giver. And so if the giver decides that today he's not giving you anything, you are left on your own. Whereas if you build your systems, you build your institutions, and you remove the cult of personality type leadership that we're seeing today, Guyanese in the next few years are going to be better off, and our children and our grandchildren are going to be better off.
No, I think you give a powerful articulation of where you are. I meant to ask you. I hope you haven't had a blackout. That you were saying that you were worried that there might be a blackout.
Oh, okay. I think I went to mute the mic, but I ended up touching the video.
No, I was worried that.
GPL seems to be holding up for now. Let's see how that goes.
No, I was saying that I think I wanted to ask you about the point that young Guyanese are still emigrating, despite all of this happening at home. And, I wanted to ask, how would you think about creating opportunities? And I think you've laid out kind of like the philosophy of creating opportunities. But, in terms of some of the concrete plans, like some of the people have talked about a network of things similar to GTI, or, the technical institutes across the various regions, how they might strengthen the university. Some folks have talked about, childcare. Are there any of those kinds of initiatives that are part of the Forward Guyana movement's platform?
Absolutely they are. And the fact that you've highlighted so many that we have also identified says to you that there is a commonality and an understanding of what is needed. What is lacking, however, is the political will to do it. And that continues to be the problem. We have to make sure that we ensure that our young people see that life is possible here, first of all. They have to envision and believe that they could stay here, they can build a life. And so we have to actively promote that. And all of those measures that you've pointed out are important. We also have to have a rebirth of meritocracy. Yeah. Dr. Blackman, it is the intangibles that continue to ruin this country. And someone that has studied, gained a wonderful grade point average at the university, overcome serious obstacles and hurdles to get a first degree, some of them the first person in their family graduating, etc. And they see somebody who has 5 subjects CXC get a position because of the fact that they are the friend, family, or favorite, or somebody in power. The demoralizing effect of that is something that we cannot begin to comprehend unless we've experienced it ourselves. And so we have to restore meritocracy. And once that mindset is restored, that we will incentivize our best and our brightest to stay here, that we will pay and we will create career pathways where people can actually see themselves building careers here. We pay our people better. Our nurses are leaving in droves. Yeah. Do you know that the current nurse to patient ratio at the Georgetown Hospital exceeds 30-1 when the international standard is 6 or 7 to 1 patients to 1 nurse? Those types of stressors are what we have to address, because people will tell you that life in Guyana is hard. But what we have to create is a compelling vision and a belief that you could build a life here. And it has to start with us restoring meritocracy. Everything else is doable. But unless we make it clear to people that you'll get the position that you deserve and that you're qualified to hold, and you'll get it based on the merits It's a lost cause. We're
Uh,
gonna start.
It's a very difficult conversation. We could have a chat all night about this conversation about
It's
merit
true.
in the
It is
context
true. It is
of
true.
Guyana and how to drive that once again. And I know many people have been thinking about it and have been running various kinds of initiatives. And I think you're absolutely right. What is it is not at least the thinking for 2025 and beyond, given where we're sitting, has to be a thinking where every Guyanese needs to have their capacity built to the maximum and needs to recognize that their their skill set, their particular skills are going to be used to the maximum by this country. And I think to the extent that you can really foster that inclusive vision, I think you will have had a significant impact on the electorate. I want to kind of shift gears. You've mentioned
Mhm.
Venezuela a few times, and you have been the shadow foreign minister. So you have unique insights into our international challenges.
Well, not to hear some people tell it, but okay.
Well, I don't think you will. Exactly.
Those who know will know what I mean when I say that, but I digress.
Uh, but this territorial claim has it's intensified, and as you've just mentioned, I mean, Venezuela is it's unstable. I mean, how would what's the Forward Guyana movement's posture in regard to handling our sovereignty within the context of where we are at this moment in with Venezuela?
Our posture is that there ought to be no distance between government, opposition, third parties. There ought to be no daylight between us when it comes to our territorial integrity and our sovereignty. And so that ought to be made very, very clear. Um, Having said that, though, the current situation in which we find ourselves, I place squarely at the feet of the PPPC administration. And why do I say that? We have in Guyana, by the foreign secretary's own admission, over 100,000 Venezuelans in the country. Now, mind you, most of these people are hardworking, people fleeing conflict, etc. But the difficulty that I have with the entire situation is that the PPPC has allowed unchecked migration of Venezuelans into Guyana. Before I proceed further, let me make another caveat. There are descendants of Guyanese parents who are making their way back home here and are entitled by law to Guyanese citizenship. I'm not speaking about those persons, but I'm speaking about the fact that this PPPC administration allowed, irrespective of the fact that since 2021, I have been warning, begging, pleading in the National Assembly to pay attention to this matter, because what we effectively have on our hands is a soft invasion. Because you have 100,000 people who are unregistered, unregulated, with a belief that Essequibo belongs to them. And I think that is what we have to make people understand, distinguishes the Venezuelan migrant from the ordinary migrant. So you have Venezuelans who think that the Essequibo is theirs, erroneously so, of course, but this is their belief. They've been taught this since nursery school. And so to allow that influx of population from a state that has over 20 million people into our state that got 1 million, you understand how easily Guyanese could be outnumbered in our own country and the implications that it has for our political economy and framework. Because let's say you have an average of 7,000 votes making one seat. Do you understand how the balance of power could be completely removed from the hands of Guyanese if
Yeah.
this situation is not managed? And
Yes.
so I keep making the point to the PPP that the deliberate injection of population into a country is a tool of hybrid warfare. Open your eyes, understand that Maduro is playing the long game, understand that he will continue to say to Venezuelans to come here and to undermine us from within. And what do you do when you're undermined from within? It doesn't invoke the ire of the international community because shots were not fired. This was not an act of war as we know war traditionally is defined. This is the overwhelming of your systems, the overwhelming of your political infrastructure.
No, I think
But
I think you make a very good point. It's one of the things that I've tried to share with colleagues, which is that, as you've just noted, 7,000 votes amounts to one seat. If you know, seven times, if you just had 21,000 people voting, you'd have, and voting in some very concentrated way for something, I think you could reasonably see that, your sovereignty could indeed be impacted internally. Uh, and so certainly that is something for policymakers in Guyana to be aware of. And I certainly think the point that you've made around having a Guyanese response and not a political party response to questions of Venezuela is something that is of vital importance and has been missing. And so it would be good to see uh, more discussion in this regard about safeguarding the interests of Guyanese, the
I
safeguarding for Guyana.
I
Yeah.
worry, Dr.
Yeah.
Blackman, that we're trying to close the barn door and the horse is already bolted. Because this didn't come about by happenstance. This was deliberately engineered by the PPPC administration. Why do I say that? In I think it was in 2021, the PPPC administration gutted the Registration of Births and Deaths Act. And what that allowed them to do, if a citizen is going to be registered as a late registration, which happens in far-flung areas, um, let's say Tiger Pond in Region 9, Terrence Blackman was born there. His birth was never registered, so he didn't have birth papers, as they call them. But he's now of age and he needs to do business. He wants to live. And so, ordinarily, to have a late registration of birth, number of documents would have had to have been adduced, affidavits about the school you went to, who your siblings are, 4 or 5 different concrete pieces of evidence that would say that you are who you say you are. The PPPC went to Parliament and gutted that legislation and replaced it with a provision that a Toshao or JP or a person of quote unquote high standing could issue an affidavit saying that Terrence Blackman is who Terrence Blackman says he is. And with that affidavit, Terrence Blackman could go to the registrar's office and be entitled to a birth certificate. And we are aware that there are thousands upon thousands of such affidavits that have been issued, taken to GRO. And so people who can't read a lick of Spanish, English rather, or speak a lick of English, have names like Terrence Blackman. And
Wow.
so, and have entered into our electoral roll, which explains the size of the elections of the list, right? Which explains why we have a list the size of our population, which is a mathematical. You're a maths man.
Statistically
Everybody knows
impossible. They,
that a
well, they
math
are.
is not a math.
Statistically,
But
it's
it's a
highly
mathematical.
improbable.
It's a
Yeah.
statistical impossibility. So we have that happening, and this is a direct engineering of the PPPC. So because of political expedience, they have opened the door to this, and now we are in danger of being overtaken from the inside, and they have no answers for it. And then when you talk about it, Anil Nandla loves to run out to accuse you of being xenophobic and of stoking fears, when it's just the reality that because they understood that there was heavy migration of their political base and they needed to make up those numbers in order to win an election, they were willing to gamble with the future of this nation at the altar of political expediency. And that is the reality of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is certainly an analysis that that has resonance, and it's something that genuinely ought to be thought about within our context. Since we're on the foreign policy side of the thing, I mean, how do you see Guyana? I mean, the last elections were in a sense resolved by CARICOM, uh, and so we're here again. Uh, Hopefully our CARICOM neighbors are also once again looking at things. How do you see Guyana's role in CARICOM and the broader Caribbean? And then, I'm looking at the time, and I know you folks are super busy, so maybe also CARICOM, but also put together there, you know, leaning on your own experience, you know, the United States, the role that the United States, China, certainly Brazil, these three big powers would play in an FGM administration. You're muted once more.
You did, sorry. Yes. I think you've sort of highlighted those geopolitical tensions and winds that I've been talking about. But for us, the engagement with our international partners and the international community will be on the basis of what is in Guyana's interest and also on a platform of mutual respect. I think that is important. As it relates to CARICOM, Guyana has to position itself as the leader that will uplift the region. We have, for the first time, have for the first time the resources to so do, but we have to guard against being regarded as the rich neighbor, because that is always a hazard in these types of situations. So we certainly have to play a more meaningful leadership role in terms of championing food security, climate resilience, but Dr. Blackman, what undermines our credibility on these initiatives is that we do not understand that, as the Jamaicans say, you have to dance a yard before you dance abroad. So it undermines our credibility in CARICOM when Irfan Ali goes to talk about food security and his population is massively food insecure to the degree that 3 square meals a day is impossible for the majority of the population. It is impossible for Guyana, being 6 feet under sea level at the coast, to champion climate resilience when every bit of infrastructure that this government builds ignores climate resilience. When we continuously ignore the need to defend our coast against the sea, instead we're busy building golf courses and roads and bridges for the sea to come in and wash away. So the fact that what we are saying currently internationally we do not practice at home undermines our credibility. We in Forward Guyana, we believe in the Forward Guyana movement that what we say abroad, we must practice at home. And that will build our credibility on the world stage. And of course, it will set us up to interact in a far more meaningful and a far stronger way with our allies and our international partners. But certainly, the overarching guiding North Star for us will be what is Guyana's national interest. And we will clearly have to define what Guyana's national interest is.
Yeah, this has been a really wonderful conversation, and I have so many other questions that I wanted to ask you. Uh,
Well, you can invite me again.
well, well, see, we initially conceived of this as a kind of 6 weeks, where we invite the 6 political parties for a 1 hour conversation about what they're doing in a slightly less polarizing and structured way, so people could speak in a manner freely like yours, and I think we've been able to elicit quite a bit of what people stand for rather than the little piece of paper that they put in your hand. So I mean, I think this has been a really wonderful kind of articulation of what the Forward Guyana movement is. And, there certainly is a question about, can I, will you be able to break this deadlock? And there are many people who are sitting thinking, we'd love to see them break the deadlock. And so,
And I would say to them, we need you to do it. We need you to do it. And this is not something that depends on us alone. This is a symbiotic relationship where the people of Guyana have to understand that this can't happen without you, and that this future that we're saying to you is possible requires your active participation in it. And so it is a question of you going to the polls and voting with the understanding of what is at stake, not the perpetuation of the status quo, but daring to believe that that future is possible. And the beautiful thing about elections is that they come every 5 years. And so you have the ability as a voting population to do and undo so much. But you have to dare to believe and understand your role as an active participant in all of this, right? So literally, this is why you have the power to vote, because you determine by your vote the future that you want to see. And I will preface that. I will clarify that by saying this is why, Dr. Blackman, an impartial, independent GCOM is necessary, because they are the custodian of the electoral process. And to the degree that GCOM is compromised as it is the degree to which every vote cast could be frustrated or vitiated simply because GCOM has been captured by political actors who intend to propagate the status quo that we're currently trapped in.
this has been a really in-depth exploration of Guyana's, you know, current political and economic landscape. I think you've really focused on the challenges of the the two-party or historic two-party system. I think you've made clear here the need for constitutional reform, the importance of a genuinely inclusive government, and I think you've articulated really nicely for us the Forward Guyana movement's vision for breaking this cycle of exclusion, and one hopes fostering kind of shared power. I think you've also emphasized Forward Guyana's approach to the management of the oil resources, the risks of reliance on single sector, the need for economic diversification, the questions that arise from migration, both internally, our folks leaving and folks from Venezuela coming in, national identity and security, and, certainly the role of CARICOM and the broader international community. So I really want to thank you, Ms. Amanza Walton-Desir, for coming in and sharing this vision with us. And, I want to give you the last word. I mean, help us to envision the Guyana that Amanza Walton-Desir and the Forward Guyana movement envisions for Guyana.
It was such a pleasure being on here with you. I'm always happy to come on and to talk about this country. Because the reality is that these elections coming here are not about left or right. They're about forward or backward. That really is the choice before us as Guyanese. And we could move forward into a future where it is based on one, respect, mutual respect for each other in this nation. We can move forward into a future where the parliament actually works, and the parliament is representative of the people, You know, our constitution says in Article 9, sovereignty belongs to the people who exercise it through their duly elected representatives. But the reality is that if you ask the average Guyanese, they do not feel represented by politics as we currently have it. They do not feel as if their voices are being heard in this country. And so our vision is a return of power to the people, where as politicians and as leaders, we are actually held accountable. We're actually held accountable because, Dr. Blackman, this is not about the shortage of ideas. We know what has to be done. What we are lacking and what we have been lacking, and what Forward Guyana is here to change, is to present Guyana with a cadre of leaders who are willing and who have the political will to do the hard and necessary work. And that is what we're promising Guyana. We know what has to be done to fix the systems. But unfortunately, we've been at the mercy of selfish, self-serving people who have kept us trapped in this cycle for the last 60 years. And Fort Guyana is saying that we are here, we are a credible alternative to the status quo. I am proud to stand with people who have not been in corruption or who have not been a part of the cabal of the PPPC, and who have benefited from all of the shadiness and the deals. Because, you know, corruption can't drive out corruption. Let's be very clear about that. And so Forward Guyana presents the people of Guyana with a credible alternative, with a group that enjoys respect, that can stand and hold anybody accountable. Because you know what? We have not been compromised by bribes and corruption and graft. And so I think that is what is important. And this is the future that we are offering Guyanese, where for the first time, politicians are actually accountable to the people that they claim to represent, and not this albatross that has been around our necks for the last 60 years. And so we are saying to you that we are here to give you the opportunity to break that cycle. We are here because we could stand and hold everybody accountable without fear or favor, affection, or ill will. We are here to say to you that we are a credible option, and we're asking for you to support us on this mission, because we cannot do this without you. You are intrinsically bound up in all that we do, and you are our focus and our future. And you know, I want to be very clear, because we've walked around and we've heard people saying that, you know, they're being contacted by the larger parties and being told about vote splitting and don't waste your vote. But I want to say to every Guyanese, to the degree that you vote in accordance with your conscience, it could never be a wasted vote, because that is the essence of democracy. That one man or one woman can go into a box and express what they desire for this country and have that expression honored, irrespective of whether it goes contrary to what even, you know, their household or this or just what is generally expected of a certain demographic or a certain people or whatever. So we have to step out. We have got to step out. We cannot do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And you have before you a team of credible people who are willing to work, who are willing to reach across the aisle. Because I think, Dr. Blackman, this is important for us to say, that no one political party in Guyana has all the answers. The task before us is so great that we need every Guyanese. We need you in the diaspora to come back home and bring your knowledge. We need you not only to send money. We don't want just financial remittances. We want knowledge remittance as well. Because when you sit down and you understand what Guyana is on the cusp of, you realize that you need every able-bodied man, woman, and to degree possible child to really move this nation along. So
Yes.
thank you for having me.
Thank
And
you.
I'll have to come back at any time to talk with you.
Yeah, and I hope I hope the research was good. So Amanza Awana Rukia Walton, Ovid Walton, and Joy Walton would be very
Joy
proud.
Walton,
Would
pick
be
me,
very,
as we say here in
would
Guyana.
be very, very proud. And we wish you all the very best in the
Thank you.
campaign.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank you,
very
Dr. Blackman. God bless you. And God bless us all. Bye-bye.